Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's nice to be here, and thank the folks on the panel and the witnesses. Certainly coming from a state like West Virginia, we're very, as every state is, familiar with the Endangered Species Act and some of the pluses and some of the minus, because in some cases, the ESA has at times been used to unnecessarily kind of slow down progress, and particularly in our timbering and our energy industries, we've had, and actually some of our construction on our highways going through the mountains, and it's inhibited our ability to really build. I wouldn't even say build quickly. I'm talking like decades here, and so those impacts are felt everywhere. So I guess. I was really pleased to hear, I've heard all three of you say at least several words. Seems like there's a lot of agreement on the panel on directions that can make for improvements to alleviate some of these, but also help us understand how the process is. I am curious to know, I think, Mr. Yablonsky, you mentioned that the states could play maybe a bigger role here. Could you elaborate on that a little bit and what kind of capacities I know you live in Montana, but you were in Florida, so you've been to several different states.
Yeah, I'm a former state wildlife chairman in Florida, and so I'm a little partial to states being able to manage wildlife. There's something like 200,000 species, domestic species in North America. The states probably manage 99% of those species, and they do it pretty well. But I think there's another provision in the ESA under Section 6 that allows for ESA cooperative agreements that could be used more robustly. And essentially, think of it as how we delegate authority under Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act to the states. The states have, within the statute, it lays out sort of 5 requirements that the states would have to hit in order for the Fish and Wildlife Service to shift management of species, oversight of species, take permitting of species to the states. And I think in a state like Florida, all 5 of those are very doable. Some of those are like habitat acquisition programs and public process and an agency to actually do this.
Why do you think that's not occurring? Why do you think that? Is there lack of trust that the states don't have the capacity, or they're not going to oversee properly, or why is it still so federalized?
Yeah, I would say it's part of it's a mindset at the agency itself. It's hard to just kind of shift something directly back to the states. The other is litigation. We actually tried this in Florida in 2012, and the service at that time actually, under President Obama, actually agreed to do it. But the state of Florida was sued. The agency was sued right away, and Florida ended up backing off of it because of the litigation.
I see. One thing I've always been curious about, the northern ear bat, I think it's, anyway, it has a white nose syndrome. It has an illness that's making it, the species, die out, yet it is on a list, so you have to watch it. How do you see that as conflicting when you have a species that has an inherent disease that's killing it, and it has nothing to do with the development around it, or the environment, or the habitat, or any kind of activity? How do we balance that? Because this has been an issue for us. And I don't know, Mr. Lee, you're shaking your head. Is it Lee or Lai?
Lee.
Lee.
Yes.
What would you say about that?
Thank you for that question, Senator Capito. Actually, this is very close to me, because one of the last things I did at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was to sign a policy that gives flexibility in that very situation. The example there is that we know the northern long-eared bat. And
Long-eared, yeah, what I call it, the northern-eared, yes, thank you.
Yeah, and many other bat species are listed because of white nose syndrome. If it weren't for white nose syndrome, they wouldn't be on the ESA list at all. So the policy we signed was actually to allow, in this case, wind energy companies to fund mitigation measures for white nose syndrome as a way to meet the ESA requirements for mortality from wind turbines. So that's an example of flexibility, because you're actually funding the most important needs of the species, i.e. white nose syndrome, even though your take is actually from something completely different, right, which is wind turbine operations. So that gives a lot more flexibility to energy companies.
Well, I mean, I think there has to be some flexibility here, because in the end, even if the bat is still suffering from a terminal disease, it's going to naturally, the habitat, you know, the numbers are going to go down, whether it's getting hit by a windmill or not. And so I don't know, I've always kind of wondered about that, like, how do you solve that problem? I'm sure if we went back 200,000 years ago, there's species that are no longer here because of the evolutionary nature of life, I guess. So the other question I'm going to ask, well, I'm out of time, so I'll let. Well, I was going to ask because I'm from more of the East Coast. Senator Whitehouse is more East Coast. You guys are Western, California, Midwest. What do you see in terms of differences as we go? Just really generally, is there a big difference in terms of looking at species compared to the East, Midwest, or West? It's because I've always thought it's more of an issue out West. Maybe it's because there's more federal lands. I don't know. Does anybody have an answer to that?
I think it's interesting. One of the commonalities are large charismatic species. Whether I was in Florida dealing with Florida panther or manatee, woke up the next day, I was dealing with grizzly bears and wolves out in Montana. They tend to get all the attention and suck the oxygen out of the room, but it also drains a lot of the resources of the agencies, for the agency, where some of these species should be coming off list, and we should be putting resources towards other species that really need it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.